Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Jen and today we're going to talk about everything you should be doing in the garden in the month of May, specifically if you're in a hot climate area like zones 8 and up. I'm here in coastal central Florida, zone 10A, and there's a lot to do in the garden this month. May is the middle of spring. It's a transitional month where we need to be moving towards those summer crops. If you're interested in figuring out what seeds to sow this month, what transplants to put in, and even what to do with some of those lingering plants in your garden, you came to the right place. Hit that like and subscribe button and let's get into it. In a hot climate like zones 8 and up, May is really such a transitional month in the garden. It's a month where we need to be getting any remaining cool weather crops harvested and out of there. And then we need to be planting. Anything that goes into the garden needs to be able to handle the heat. We're in the middle of spring and temperatures are starting to rise out of the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. In that type of heat, pest pressure is going to increase. We always talk about the bugs in Florida in summertime, and we all know it stays hot well into the evenings. So make sure you're planting heat-loving crops. I've got some suggestions here today, but you can also do a little further research on your local Ag Extension Office website to figure out any additional varieties you might want to use in your area. When thinking about greens for the summertime, your best bet is going to be Swiss chard. Not everybody likes Swiss chard, so you may choose to forego it, but if you've never planted it, never tried it, I encourage you to give it a shot. If you hate the taste of it and you choose to never plant it again, at least it looks really colorful in your garden. Another heat-loving crop is going to be a southern favorite, okra. I've got Clemson spineless, which is a very popular variety here in Florida and across the southern U.S. I picked up these seeds from Botanical Interest, and I plan to sow some seeds in my seed starting cells today for those. The reason I'm going to plant these in seed starting cells instead of directly in the garden is because I still have cabbage that's finishing up. I still have carrots that are finishing up, and I don't quite think I have the garden space available to plant this in the garden yet. I will be harvesting those plants this month, and I want to be ready to transplant a new plant into that spot as soon as I harvest it. Something like okra may also not be something that you love to eat, but I think it's going to be really fun to grow this and then have an abundance and freeze some of it and then make the best gumbo you've ever tasted in time for football season. Now, before I move into the next category of seeds to start, I want you to understand that sometimes summertime is not your favorite crop to grow, and so sometimes you plant a cover crop with the goal of adding some nutrients back into your soil to get it ready for fall plantings. So something like beans and peas will add nitrogen back into your soil so your soil is ready to produce those cold crops like cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts in the fall. I'm going to go with some soybeans actually. I picked these up from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. It's my first time growing them, but my family actually eats a lot of edamame because I'm always trying to give my kids a little bit more protein, but they don't want to eat any meat, so edamame can be a really good source of protein for them. Now, if you have trellises that you want to keep full of plants well into the summertime, think about some pole beans. We've got some black-eyed peas, and we've even got some Kentucky Wonder beans that are pole varieties, so they'll climb up a trellis, an arched trellis, or a cattle panel trellis against the fence. They'll climb that easily, and you'll be able to get a good harvest. Although these plants will keep producing well into the summer, they may have reduced productivity if it gets a little bit too hot. And in that case, you can think about adding a shade cloth or something to give the plant a little relief from the sun. Now, I have planted some bush beans as well. I've done the variety Blue Lake 274 from Botanical Interest, and I chose this variety because it's resistant to bean rust. Bean rust is something that thrives in my humid, hot climate, and so I don't want to plant any beans that can't withstand it. It just wouldn't be worth my time. After you figure out what beans and peas you want to plant, the next thing you must do is sweet potatoes. Recently, I've heard of some people dreading planting sweet potatoes because they don't even like to eat them. You got to try it like baked, bake it really long so it's very, very soft, and then you cut it open and you put butter, honey, and brown sugar on it, and it is so good. It's basically dessert. My kids absolutely love it. So I'm really looking forward to planting sweet potatoes this summer. Sweet potatoes are a little bit different to plant. So let me talk you through what I've got going over here and how I plan to plant the sweet potatoes. When I first started learning about how to grow sweet potatoes, I was reading about sweet potato slips, and all I could think about was, oh, that must be a piece of a sweet potato that's cut up with a sprout, just like you do like a russet potato or any other type of Irish potato. Boy, was I wrong. The sweet potato slip is actually a plant with leaves. It's not a piece of the potato at all. So there's two different methods that I'm trying out here to create my own sweet potato slips, because I started trying to buy them and it was like really expensive. It was like $25 for a handful of slips, and I just thought, man, I can buy a whole bag of sweet potatoes at Costco for like $7. Let me figure out how to grow some sweet potato slips because I think I have some time. So about a month ago I started this experiment. This method is where you put a whole sweet potato in a jar of water with these stakes to kind of stabilize it up top, where you have a portion of the sweet potato underwater and a portion of the sweet potato above water, out of the water. So the way that it works is that the portion underwater will grow roots, and then you'll start to see some sprouts grow off the sweet potato here. And then it's actually a two-part process. So once these sprouts on here are about like 6 to 8 inches long, you're going to cut that off from the potato and put it in a mason jar of water all by itself until that grows roots. Once that grows big enough roots, you can transplant it into your garden and grow sweet potatoes. This method over here is a little bit different, and I've read that it's faster, and I think I might be convinced that I agree. But basically you take a sweet potato. It actually works better if it's a sprouted sweet potato from your pantry. Put it directly in the soil. Keep the soil moist, just like you do like regular garden soil. I use some seed starting mix, and the idea is that roots would grow out of the potato and into the soil on the bottom part, and sprouts will grow on the exposed part, and you'll get a growth like this. Once you get a growth like this, so the funny thing is, when I was doing research about this, they all said it was still a two-part process, and you would have to cut this green part off and then put it in a mason jar, and it'll grow its roots again, and it'll grow its own roots, just like the other one. So I've already done this once, and what I found was that once I lifted up this potato to pull off this sprout, it was like the whole thing separated from the potato, and so I already ended up with a plant with roots, and I just put it directly into my garden, and it's been going for a couple weeks now. So I'm going to try it again and see if that was a fluke or if this is the same way. I brought my shears just in case. Let's see. I am trying to be careful because you can see, I think I need to change the camera angle so you can actually see really closely what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm going to gently pull this potato and the plant up. I'm going to try to do it with awkward hand angles so that you can see it in the camera. Trying to be gentle. You can see it's lifting up all of this soil. If we move it around, you can start to see some of the roots. And look, it's not, there's like hardly any roots over here. It's all attached to the sprout. Oof, man, it's a lot of roots. I'm trying to be gentle, but I don't even know why. Like, maybe you can see right here before I even disconnect it. Oh, see, I just popped it off, and it's already its own plant. I'm trying to gently separate the roots. I'll try to brush off some of this soil, although I really probably should keep it on there. But you can see all of those roots. This is just from putting that sweet potato directly in the soil. And so what I'm going to do is go plop this somewhere in my garden right now. Let's go do it. All right, this is the target square. I'm going to move the mulch over for now, and then I'm going to add the mulch back in at the end. this is quite a bit of roots, so I'm going to dig kind of far down. See how big that hole is? We're going to plop the sweet potato slip right in there, just like that. Cover it up with soil, press it down so it gets a nice firm grip in the soil. Make sure it's nice and secure. I'm trying to keep the soil level about the same as what it was over there in the seed starting tray, and then I'm going to cover it with mulch, and then I'm going to go get the hose and make sure to give this sweet potato a nice round of water. Now I'm just going to put my sweet potato back in the same spot in the soil, bury it again, and it'll produce another sprout. I already did this once, and it's the same potato that produced a sprout, so I know it'll just keep producing if I put it back. So sweet potatoes can be really fun and actually really good, so I highly recommend planting those. It's one of the highlights of the summer. If you have trouble remembering which type of potato to plant in the summer, just remember sweet loves heat. It rhymes. Now let's get into talking about what you should be transplanting in the month of May. The types of plants you should be transplanting this month are any of those seeds that we just started, and it's really your last chance to transplant something like a squash to get any kind of harvest at all. This month I'm going to transplant Seminole pumpkin. This is a variety, probably like the only successful pumpkin variety that you can grow in Florida. I've got 4 starts here. This one is just barely coming up. I'm going to wait to transplant until I get some adult leaves, but it should be coming shortly, so I'm definitely going to transplant this into the garden in the month of May. And pumpkins sprawl out. They have sprawling vines. They need so much room. So choose a spot, whether it's in the ground or on the edge of your raised bed, something where it's not going to be an issue for you to figure out where to put those climbing vines. Pumpkins are really heavy, so if you're going to put it on something like an arch trellis or something like that, make sure you're ready to support that fruit with something like a fruit net or something to help take the load off of the vine. You don't want the pumpkin to get so heavy that it falls off before it's time to harvest. Last year I tried to grow pumpkins and I had such a hard time. I didn't try the right variety though, so I'm really hopeful about these. I hope you give them a shot too. Now we need to talk about those other plants in the garden. I'm talking about peppers and eggplants, the plants that actually can survive for years in your Florida garden. They just may drop in productivity in the summer. So I've got my eggplant right here, followed by shishito peppers back there. The hotter the pepper, the better the heat tolerance. So now's a good time to start jalapenos or habaneros or transplant them. I've got a couple jalapeno plants that I planted in there and they're pretty young right now, but my eggplant is finally producing an eggplant. Look, it's actually growing really rapidly. It's my first time ever growing an eggplant. So I'm kind of surprised. It's the Black Beauty variety. I hope this plant seems to be so easy to maintain and grow that I hope that I can keep it for years in the garden. If I notice the heat starts burning the leaves or showing signs that it's too much for the plant, I may look for a shade cloth and try to figure out how to give it a little bit of relief from the sun. Another crop you should be finishing up right now is probably your tomatoes. I've got San Marzano tomatoes right here that have been producing for months. And I mean, I haven't bought tomatoes from the grocery store in months and I eat them every day for breakfast. So the plant itself is doing really well, but it will probably reach a point where it's overrun by tomato hornworms or it just catches blight or some other disease this summer and I'm gonna have to yank it. It's okay, it's just what happens with tomato plants in the hot summer climate. I hear Everglades tomatoes can withstand the heat and still produce in Florida, so I'm gonna give those a shot. I'll probably transplant those in this month, but my San Marzano, if it doesn't die this month, it'll probably die in June or July. I'm gonna keep harvesting as long as I can and pull it when it starts becoming an area where the pests are just thriving, and it's more problematic to keep in my garden than it is to pull it. That's it for my planting guide for May. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you're interested in trying some new crops just like I am. Let's try it out this summer together, and we'll talk about how it went in a couple months. See you next time, guys.